Hello there, my name's Gordon. I go to St John Church, Hildenborough, and I've been a Christian for about 30 years. I'd like to share that story with you, how I actually become a Christian, how I met the Lord Jesus. I started off in North London where I was born, lived in a house with my mum and dad and grandfather and grandmother. I lived a pretty ordinary sort of childhood. Remember lots of happiness and lots of hugs and lots of fun. And it was really a good time. I stayed at that place in North London until I was 13, and my mum and dad, we moved down to the West End. When I left school altogether, when I was 15, I got an apprenticeship as a glazier, which has served me quite well for the rest of my life. I also started to earn money, and I bought myself a motor scooter, Lambretta. And being in the West End of London, I became a mod. Well, there's nothing to be ashamed of, it's a great bunch. But it was great times, you know. We used to have parties every Friday night, Saturday nights, and we had a good fun. We wasn't violent people, we just used to be noisy. Well, during these years, a few different things happened. One of them was that I joined a parachute regiment, Territorial Army Parachute Regiment, which was sound interesting. They taught me how to jump out of airplanes. They taught me how to kill people. But it didn't live too long though, because when the defence cuts in the early 60s, mid-60s, they disbanded our regiment. They did threaten us with the SAS, but fortunately I didn't go down that direction. But at the same time as I was driving around on my scooter, I was working, and I met my wife, my now wife, Suzanne. We've been married 50 years this year. We were married in 1970, 50 years. Absolutely wonderful. I loved her from the minute I met her. We got married in a little church up at Blackheath. My parents had moved again to Blackheath, and I was still living with them. We moved to a little place up, we moved to Blackheath, and there was a church right on Blackheath. It wasn't St John's, no, it was All Saints, Blackheath. Beautiful little church, you can't miss it. And we went there, we got married there, and we decided to buy a house in Elton, which we done. Now lots of things happened during this time. Obviously we was getting the house in shape, we was doing this and doing that, and we was getting about, going on holidays, we were totally enjoying each other. And a friend of Sue's, who she worked with, I met her husband, he invited me to be a Freemason, which I thought, that sounds good, I'll do that. So I followed along, I became a Freemason, and shortly after that I became a Freemason, my daughter Charlotte was born. That was in 1977. And we lived in the house a little while longer, and then we decided to move to Hildenborough. The reason being that I'd started a business off, and it was really doing well, really doing well. I had government contracts coming out my ears, I had big companies using my services, and it was almost a time to license to print money, if you like. We was doing very well, and our turnover sort of quadrupled in as many months. We then decided perhaps we would move down to Hildenborough, and because we could afford a house there, and it was great. We moved down here. It was a long way from where we grew up in North London, but it was at Hildenborough. My daughter was there, the family was there, it was good. And I carried on with building my business, and Sue started to talk to the local mums, and we sort of, different things happened. And she'd come into, one evening I come back from one of my Freemasons meetings, and she said to me, well actually I was being polite, I said, have your friends been round tonight? She said, yes they have. And she said, I've got something to tell you. I said, well tell me. She said, well, Freemasons and occult practice. I said, you're having a laugh, ain't you? Occult practice. I said, a bunch of good boys using their money to help others. I said, I don't call that bad. She suggested bad. So that night we had an argument-ish, and we went to bed. And I was laying in bed, and I had a sort of restless night. And suddenly I felt a presence in the room. And I thought, oh, what's this? So I put a bit gaze around the room. I thought, there's nobody there. And then I looked up, and the curtains were stuck on the ceiling, and there was a wind, a very gentle wind blowing through the room. And I thought, oh, this is strange. This is very strange. But next morning I forgot about it, put it down to a bad dream or a bit of cheese I had or something, some reason. And we carried on life, and Sue had this group, this gospel team come around every week, and they used to talk about the Gospels and tell them about Jesus, which I wasn't particularly interested in. And she used to say, "We come to church," and I say, "Well, no, I'll go and sort the garden out." So she'd been going to a few meetings, and eventually she got baptised, and I went to this baptism, and it was enjoyable, and the people come out. But when we got home, I said to Sue, "Why do people all laughing? Why are they laughing? Are they mad? Is something wrong with them?" And she said, "No, she'd always like that." Oh, no. All right. So time went on again, and then I went to another lodge meeting. I went to them quite often, quite frequently. This was always after a lodge meeting. And I came home. Okay, we didn't have an hour. Went to bed again. Once again, I had a restless night. And I was looking round, and I thought, oh. And then I sensed someone's at the side of my bed. And I just looked over, and I could see a white gown. I went, ooh.